The City of the Dead by Walker Percy. The title is not quite ironic and only slightly ambiguous. It refers mainly, of course, to the remarkable cemeteries of New Orleans, true cities of the dead, and to a certain liveliness about them. But it also refers to my own perception of New Orleans as being curiously dispirited in those very places where it advertises itself as being most alive. For example, its business community and its official celebration, Mardi Gras. Compared with Dallas and Houston and Atlanta, New Orleans is dead from the neck up, having no industry to speak of except the port and the tourists. Happily for some of us who wouldn't have it otherwise, unhappily for half the young blacks who are unemployed. As for Mardi Gras, boredom sets in early when Rex, the Lord of Misrule, as he is called, though he never quite looks the part, a middle-aged businessman, toasts his queen at the Boston Club, daughter of another middle-aged businessman. The boredom approaches deep coma at the famous balls, which are as lively as high school tableaux. The real live festival of Mardi Gras takes place elsewhere, in the byways, in the neighborhood truck parades. As for famous old Bourbon Street, it is little more now than standard U.S. sleaze, the same tired old strippers grinding away, T-shirt shops, New Orleans jazz gone bad, art gone bad, same old $32 painting of same old bayou. The cemeteries, true cities of the dead, seem at once livelier and more exotic to the visitor newly arrived, say, from the upper Protestant South, where the cemeteries are sedate memorial gardens, or from New York City, where mile after mile of Queens is strewn with gray stone, a vast, gloomy moraine. A New Orleans cemetery is a city in miniature. Streets, curbs, iron fences, its tombs above ground. Otherwise, the coffins would float out of the ground. Little two-story doll houses, complete with doorstep and lintel. The older cemeteries are more haphazard, tiny lanes as crooked as old Jerusalem, meandering aimlessly between the cottages of the dead. I remember being a pallbearer at St. Louis No. 1, one of the oldest cemeteries, stepping across corners and lots like Gulliver in Lilliput. The tombs are generally modest duplexes, one story per tenant, for good and practical reasons. It could actually accommodate an extended Creole family, for, given a decent interval, when presumably coffin and tenant had gone to dust, the bones were shoved back into a deep crypt in the rear, room for one and all. After all these years, a bothersome question of my childhood was answered. Where will people live when cemeteries take up all the space on earth? They, the little cities, are liveliest on All Saints' and All Souls' Day, when families turn up to fix up the family tomb, polishing or whitewashing the stone, scrubbing the doorstep, for all the world like Baltimore housewives scrubbing the white steps of row houses. Not many years ago, the lady of the house might be directing black servants in this annual housekeeping, as much mistress here of the dead as of the living at home. There are still iron benches in place where Creole ladies, dressed in the highest winter fashion, receive friends all day. Even now, All Saints and All Souls have a more festive air than otherwise. Should they not? Startlingly different from the unctuous solemnity of forest lawn. Crowds throng the tiny streets, housekeeping for the dead, setting out flowers, real and plastic, perhaps regilding the lettering, while vendors hawk candy and toys for the children, and on All Souls, saying a not noticeably sad prayer or two for the dead. Mark Twain once said that New Orleans had no architecture to speak of, except in the cemeteries. As usual, he exaggerated, because the Spanish houses and their courtyards in the quote-unquote French Quarter and the little Victorian cottages, shotguns all over town, are charming and unique. But on approaching New Orleans, one might well agree with Mark Twain. the major architectural addition in the past 100 years is the Superdome, and the skyline looks like standard United States glass high-rises set like Stonehenge around a giant ban roll-on. Not so in the cemeteries, where every conceivable style is rendered by taste or whim, from the simple two-storied beehive to toy Greek and Egyptian temples, and even miniature cathedrals, to a small artificial mountain containing the mausoleum of the Army of Tennessee, General Albert Sidney Johnston atop, astride his horse and still in command. The great Texas general gazes at Robert E. Lee himself atop his column across town. It is easy to imagine a slightly bemused expression on the faces of these stern Anglo-Saxon commanders as they contemplate between them this, their greatest city, and yet surely the one place in the South most foreign to them.